Humaira never imagined her life would take a turn that would bury her dreams under the weight of responsibility. She once saw herself as a future doctor, someone who would wear a white coat with pride and fulfill the vision her father had always held for her. But the day he passed away, her world collapsed like a fragile structure losing its final support. She was the eldest of 5 sisters, and her mother's health was deteriorating rapidly. Diabetes had weakened her to the point where even daily chores seemed impossible. Humaira tried her best to continue her studies through scholarships and part-time tutoring, but the income was never enough. Bills piled up, medicines became unaffordable, and her younger sister's education came to a halt. The pressure mounted until the weight felt unbearable. She converted a small corner of her house into a tuition room, hoping the earnings would somehow cover basic needs. But despite working from morning until evening, the money barely helped them survive. One day, someone suggested a shocking idea: open a clinic. "No one will check your degree," they assured her. "People just want treatment. You're almost a doctor anyway." The thought terrified her. The idea of practicing without qualifications seemed immoral, dangerous, and dishonest. But when she saw empty medicine boxes at home and her sisters' tired faces struggling with dreams they could no longer afford, her resolve broke. With borrowed money, pawned jewelry, and a heavy heart, Humaira opened a tiny clinic. At first, no one came. The days dragged by silently, and fear whispered that she had made a terrible mistake. But slowly, patients began to appear. Some with minor ailments, others seeking private help for things they wanted hidden from society. Girls, young, frightened, sometimes alone, came asking her to terminate pregnancies they could not reveal to their families. Humaira felt that first sting of guilt when she agreed to her earliest abortion case. She charged a high amount, telling herself it was compensation for the risk. But when she returned home and placed the money in her mother's hands, watching her sister's excitement over new books and clothes, the guilt cracked, allowing something darker to slip in. Justification? Her income grew quickly. More girls came, more envelopes filled with cash passed into her hands. With each case, her conscience softened. She convinced herself she was saving lives, protecting families, preventing shame. The lie was comforting. The money was intoxicating. And slowly, without realizing it, she stepped deeper into a world where wrong felt normal and necessity disguised itself as righteousness. She didn't know then that the very life she was trying to protect would soon collide violently with the dark path she had chosen. As weeks turned into months, Humaira's small clinic grew busier. What had begun as a desperate attempt to survive slowly evolved into a routine she could perform almost mechanically. The guilt that once pricked her conscience dulled under the weight of responsibilities and the comfort that money brought into her home. With steady income, life became easier: better clothes for her sisters, proper meals, reliable medicines, and the confidence that they were no longer hanging by a fragile thread. For the first time since her father's death, the house seemed lively again. But beneath the surface of that comfort, an unseen corruption was slowly spreading, reshaping Humaira's heart without her realizing it. She had crossed a line, and once crossed, it became easier to step further. Each new case blended into the next, and every envelope filled with cash felt like a reward for survival rather than a reminder of wrongdoing. Girls from different backgrounds started coming. Some poor, some from wealthy families, all desperate to escape the consequences of their choices. Their trembling voices, their tearful eyes, their silence. Humaira saw it all but quickly learned how to detach herself. She would tell herself she was doing them a favor. She was protecting their future. She was the solution society forced them to seek. Soon, a pattern formed. Every 2 or 3 days, someone would knock at her clinic door. Sometimes mothers brought their daughters, sometimes friends accompanied each other, and sometimes, like shadows in the night, girls arrived alone, their fear barely hidden beneath their veils. Humaira took their fear, their shame, and their secrets and turned them into income. Her compassion faded behind the practicality of survival. The more she earned, the more the family expected. Her sisters bought phones, new shoes, and books. Her mother rested easier knowing the house was stable once again. No one questioned the source of money. No one dared. But Humaira's heart wasn't silent. There were nights she lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering the dreams she once had and the promises she once made to herself. She would picture her father's gentle face, his pride in her ambitions, and feel a painful twist inside her chest. She tried to bury those memories, telling herself that life had forced her into these choices. She hadn't chosen this path willingly, she was simply doing what had to be done. Yet, deep down, she knew that the line between necessity and greed was blurring. Her clinic had become more than a way to survive. It had become a habit, a system, a dark tunnel she kept walking into because she didn't know how to turn back. She had no idea that the darkness she had embraced would one day face her so closely that she would wish desperately for a way out. One late night, just as Humaira was preparing to close her clinic, the door opened abruptly. An older man stepped inside, his face tense, his eyes filled with urgency. Behind him stood a young girl, fully covered from head to toe. Even her eyes were barely visible beneath the veil. Humaira had seen many cases, but something about this pair unsettled her. The man spoke quickly, almost breathlessly, repeating the same request she heard from countless others. "I need your help. Please, handle this case." To him, it was just another transaction. To Humaira, it was another opportunity to earn. Without hesitation, she stated her fee, 20,000. She expected bargaining, hesitation, or resistance. But the man agreed instantly, as if money meant nothing. For a moment, she regretted asking for so little. She could have demanded more. But she brushed the thought aside. What mattered was the job. The girl remained near the door, unmoving, her posture stiff as if fear had locked her joints. Something in her silence, her trembling hands, the way her breathing hitched, created a strange heaviness in the room. Humaira tried to ignore it. She had trained herself to detach emotionally. Compassion only slowed her down, sympathy only made her doubt herself, and tonight, she didn't have the energy to question anything. Her phone began buzzing repeatedly. At first, she dismissed it, assuming it was a reminder or a routine call, but the screen kept lighting up with the same name, her mother, over and over. A faint uneasiness rose in her chest, but she pushed it aside. "I will call back later," she muttered under her breath and turned her focus to the case. She called the girl inside the procedure room. The girl entered slowly, each step heavy, hesitant, as though she were being dragged by fate itself. Her shoulders trembled under the thin fabric of her veil. Humaira felt a flicker of discomfort, an instinctive sense that something was terribly wrong, but she forced herself to remain steady. She had handled dozens of similar cases. This was no different, or so she thought. The girl sat in silence, her head bowed, her fingers clutching the edge of her dupatta nervously. Humaira instructed her to remove her veil, but the girl didn't respond. Her body curled inward as if she were trying to disappear. Before Humaira could insist, her phone buzzed again. Irritated yet concerned, she finally picked up the call. She didn't know that the trembling girl sitting before her and the panicked voice on the phone were about to collide into a revelation that would shatter her world. The moment Humaira answered the call, she sensed something was terribly wrong. Her mother's voice was trembling, thick with panic. "Humaira, we can't find Saira. She didn't come home from college today." The words struck like a blade. Humaira's pulse quickened, her throat tightened, and the room seemed to tilt. She clutched the phone tighter. "What do you mean she didn't come home? Did you check with her friends, the campus, the bus stop?" Her voice rose with every question. Her mother's breathing grew uneven. "We checked everywhere. Her friends don't know anything. The younger girls went out searching but came back crying, and there's something else." A pause, then a broken whisper. "We found messages on her phone." She was speaking to an older man. "I don't understand how this happened. I'm scared, Humaira. I'm so scared something bad has happened." A cold chill ran down Humaira's spine. She felt her stomach twist painfully as the truth began to crawl toward her like a venomous shadow. The older man behind the door, the trembling girl in her room, the way she moved, the fear in her shoulders, the heavy silence. Everything connected like pieces of a horrifying puzzle. Just then, the girl in the corner released a soft, shaky sob, so quiet at first that Humaira thought she imagined it. She turned sharply. The girl was crying now, her shoulders shaking harder with every passing second. Something inside Humaira snapped. "Remove your veil," she said urgently. The girl didn't move. Her fingers tightened around the fabric, refusing, trembling. "I said remove it!" Humaira's voice cracked, louder this time, filled with growing dread. The girl hesitated, then slowly lifted her hands. Her fingers shook violently as she pulled the veil away from her face. Humaira's world stopped there. Sitting under the harsh clinic light was Syra, her own youngest sister. Her face streaked with tears, eyes red and terrified, lips trembling as she whispered, "Please don't be angry, please forgive me." The phone slipped from Humaira's hand and shattered on the floor, but she didn't feel it. She couldn't feel anything, except the crushing weight of horror. Syra fell at her feet, sobbing uncontrollably. "I didn't know he would bring me here. He said he loved me. He said he would marry me. I believed him. I was blind." Humaira staggered backward, gripping the table for support. Rage flooded through her, colliding with heartbreak and betrayal. She shouted, accusing Sarah of trusting the wrong man, of risking her dignity, of destroying everything they had struggled for. But as she watched her sister trembling on the floor, she realized that anger would not undo what had already happened. The truth was already in the room. The damage was done. And now she had only one choice left: protect Syra at any cost. For several seconds, Humaira could barely breathe. Her mind raced, her vision blurred, and every thought collided violently inside her. She had spent years helping strangers hide their mistakes, yet now her own sister had fallen into the same trap. And worse, into the hands of a man old enough to be her father. The fury that burned inside her was overwhelming, but beneath that anger lay a deeper, sharper pain. She had been so busy earning money through darkness that she had failed to protect the person who needed her the most. Syra knelt at her feet, crying so hard that her voice broke with every breath. "I didn't know he was lying," she whispered. "He promised marriage. He said he would come home soon and talk to everyone. I believed him. I trusted him." Her words pierced Humaira's heart more deeply than any accusation could have. She wanted to scream and cry at the same time, scream at Syra for her innocence, and cry because life had punished her sister in a way she had never imagined, but anger wouldn't fix anything now. What was done was done. Humaira wiped her own tears roughly and forced her hands to stop shaking. She lifted Syra up and made her sit on the procedure chair. "Enough crying," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. "Right now, we don't have the luxury to fall apart. We need to protect your dignity, your future, and our family. No more mistakes." Syra nodded weakly, clutching Humaira's hand as though it was the last bit of safety in the world. Humaira called the nurse back to the clinic immediately. While preparing for the procedure, she felt like her heart was being torn apart piece by piece. Every instrument she touched, every step she took, reminded her that she was cleaning up a mess created by lies. Lies she once thought she could handle. Lies she now realized had poisoned her life far more than she understood. Once the procedure was over and Syra was resting, Humaira walked out of the room, her emotions simmering into a fierce, controlled fire. She confronted the man who had brought Syra. He stood nervously near the door, pretending to be calm but visibly shaken. Humaira faced him with a rage she had never felt before. "You should be ashamed," she said coldly. "You have daughters at home, you have a wife, and you lured a young girl into this trap?" The man stammered, trying to justify himself, but Humaira didn't let him speak. She warned him that if he ever came near Syra again, she would expose him to everyone, his family, his workplace, his entire community. His face drained of color. Without another word, he fled the clinic, terrified. Humaira locked the door behind him and leaned against it, exhausted. She had saved Syra's immediate future, but she knew this was only the beginning. Life had changed permanently. And now she had to face the consequences of her own choices while protecting her sister from the world. The night Syra's truth unfolded became a turning point that Humaira could never erase from her memory. After forcing the man out of the clinic and making sure Syra was safe, Humaira sat beside her sister, holding her hand tightly. The weight of everything crashed over her, the years of deception, the money earned through hidden sins, the countless cases she had handled without hesitation. For the first time, she felt the full impact of her choices. It wasn't just strangers who had suffered in silence. Her own family had been touched by the same darkness she had contributed to, unknowingly paving the path for her sister's destruction. When they finally returned home, the atmosphere inside the house was heavy and tense. Her mother paced anxiously, eyes swollen from crying. The younger girls sat in the living room, too frightened to speak. As soon as they saw Syra, they rushed toward her, wrapping their arms around her, crying in relief. Humaira gently separated them and guided Syra to her room. She promised everyone that she would explain everything in the morning. After settling Syra to sleep, Humaira stepped into another storm, her mother's questions. Fear, worry, and frustration poured out in rapid bursts. "We must arrange her marriage immediately," her mother kept insisting. "Before anyone finds out, before someone talks, we can't let her future be ruined." But this time, Humaira stood firm. For the first time in years, she refused to bow to fear or convenience. "We are not going to hide the truth," she said, her voice steady but filled with pain. "No more lies, no more ruined futures. I won't let anyone else's life be destroyed because we tried to cover up mistakes." Her mother stared at her, shocked. The old Humaira, the one who quietly gave in, who carried the weight of the world silently, seemed gone. In her place stood a woman shaped by fire that night. After everyone went to sleep, Humaira sat alone with her thoughts. The silence of the house felt heavier than usual. She replayed everything she had done, every choice she had made, every envelope she had accepted. The clinic she once saw as a lifeline now felt like a curse, a place where countless wrong decisions had been made, decisions that had hollowed out her morality piece by piece. She realized she could not continue. The burden was too great, the consequences too devastating. She made her decision without hesitation. She would end everything. She would shut the clinic, repay every loan, and leave behind the work that had tainted her life. It was time to step into the light. Even if the path ahead was steep and painful, this realization was her first true step toward redemption. And she knew there was no turning back. In the days that followed, Humaira held firmly to her decision. She began the difficult process of dismantling the life she had built around the clinic. Every loan she had taken, every borrowed rupee, every small debt, she paid them back one by one. It drained her financially and emotionally, but she welcomed the exhaustion. It felt like a necessary cleansing, a painful purification. She sold whatever she could, worked long hours, and saved every bit of money she earned from minor treatments until the final installment of her debt was gone. When the last payment was made, she returned to the clinic, looked around the dim room filled with memories of guilt, fear, and desperation, and closed its door forever. The following morning, she took whatever savings remained and invested them into a small general store. It wasn't much, just a simple shop with basic items, but it was clean, honest, and free of shadows. For the first time in years, Humaira felt as if her heart could breathe. The weight she carried for so long began to lift, replaced by a quiet sense of dignity she had almost forgotten she possessed. Meanwhile, Syra was undergoing her own transformation. The cheerful, carefree girl who once filled the house with laughter had grown quieter. She followed Humaira everywhere, as if seeking safety in her presence. The incident had left deep scars, but it had also awakened an awareness within her, a painful, humbling realization of how one wrong step could destroy an entire future. She spent hours reflecting, praying, and trying to rebuild herself slowly, piece by fragile piece. Humaira noticed the change in her sister and felt a blend of sadness and relief. Sadness because Syra's innocence had been stolen too soon. Relief because she was finally beginning to understand the seriousness of life. Their bond deepened, becoming stronger than ever. Humaira felt protective, almost fiercely so, and she made it her mission to guide Syra gently back towards stability. The rest of the family slowly adjusted as well. The younger girls stopped asking difficult questions, sensing the delicate atmosphere. Their mother, though shaken, relied heavily on Humaira for guidance, finally recognizing the strength her eldest daughter carried. The house was no longer filled with fear of discovery or urgency to hide the truth. Instead, a cautious calm settled in. As Humaira arranged shelves in her new store, greeting customers politely, she felt something she had not felt in years: peace. The money she earned was modest, but it brought comfort rather than guilt. She could sleep at night without the weight of sin pressing against her chest. She could look at her sisters without feeling like she had betrayed their trust. Life was far from perfect, but for the first time, it was honest. And that honesty was worth more than all the money she had ever earned from the clinic. With time, the wounds inside the household began to heal, not because the past was forgotten, but because everyone silently learned to live with it. Humaira's new store slowly became a small but steady source of income. She built it with the same dedication she once gave to the clinic, but this time without guilt, following her every step. Each day she arranged the shelves, balanced the accounts, and greeted customers with a calm gentleness that came from her renewed sense of purpose. She still worked long hours, but now her work felt pure. Every coin she earned came with dignity rather than shame. The community soon noticed Humaira's transformation. People who once whispered behind her back now acknowledged her with respect. The new store became a place where neighbors often stopped to chat or ask for advice. Children came to buy candies, women came for household items, and elders came simply to sit and rest. Her presence radiated a quiet strength that others naturally gravitated toward. Humaira didn't seek validation, but the change around her affirmed she had chosen the right path. Inside the home, the atmosphere shifted as well. The guilt and tension that once suffocated the family slowly loosened. Saira was still healing, but she was no longer lost. She began focusing on her studies again, helping around the house and spending more time with her sisters. She kept her distance from social distractions, choosing instead to rebuild her self-worth through discipline and reflection. Sometimes she would sit with Humaira in the store learning how to manage accounts or deal with customers. The two sisters rarely spoke about the night that changed everything, but their silence carried understanding rather than avoidance. Humaira's mother, though still fragile, found comfort in seeing her daughters united. She no longer pressured Humaira to hide or conceal the past. Instead, she depended on her eldest daughter for guidance, realizing that strength and honesty mattered more than society's judgment. Their home was not perfect, but it was no longer built on lies. Despite the progress, Humaira often found herself reflecting on her past choices late at night. When the house was quiet and everyone asleep, she replayed the years spent inside the dimly lit clinic. She remembered the girls who had walked in trembling, the envelopes she had accepted, the lies she told herself to justify her actions. She wondered how different her life might have been if she had held on to her father's dreams instead of giving in to fear. But regret did not consume her anymore. Instead, it guided her. It reminded her that she had been given another chance, one she could not afford to waste. Every morning when she unlocked her store, she felt gratitude. Every evening when she closed it, she felt peace. Life was simple now, but it was honest, and that honesty felt like a blessing. As the months continued to pass, Humaira found herself growing stronger in ways she had never expected. The darkness she once lived in now felt like a distant echo, painful but far enough that it no longer controlled her. She often stood behind the counter of her small store, watching life move around her, and felt a kind of stillness settle within her. It wasn't happiness exactly, but a deep sense of clarity. She had finally learned the difference between survival and righteousness. With every passing day, she understood more clearly how dangerously close she had come to losing everything. Her past choices had not only harmed strangers, unknowingly, she had almost let her own family fall into the same abyss. Saira's tragedy was a mirror that forced Humaira to confront herself. She realized that darkness does not stay contained. It seeps, spreads, and eventually reaches the people we wish to protect the most. That realization had reshaped her entire life. Now, honesty guided every decision she made. If a suitor came for Saira, Humaira insisted on revealing the truth. She refused to build another life on deception. Some families walked away immediately. Others were polite but uninterested once they heard the details. A few tried to negotiate, suggesting that the truth could remain hidden, but Humaira stood firm. If someone cannot accept her truth, she would say calmly, then they do not deserve her. Saira, though hurt at times, appreciated her sister's unwavering stance. Their bond had grown into something unbreakable, born from pain but strengthened by truth. Humaira also became more present in her sisters' lives. She guided them with compassion rather than authority, teaching them about trust, boundaries, and the consequences of choices. She didn't preach. She shared quiet lessons shaped by her own mistakes. Her sisters listened in a way they never did before. They saw her not just as the eldest sibling, but as someone who had walked through fire and survived, and soon, others began to notice as well. The same neighbors who once whispered about her now spoke highly of her resilience. Those who judged her in silence now admired her courage to rebuild her life cleanly. Even the girls who came to her store sometimes confided in her, seeking advice, asking for guidance, or simply needing someone trustworthy to talk to, Humaira never turned anyone away. She knew too well how loneliness and fear could push a person toward destructive choices. She often found herself reflecting not with shame anymore, but with understanding. She couldn't erase her past, but she had transformed what came after it. The darkness had nearly consumed her, but instead it taught her who she did not want to become. Now she was determined to walk only on the path that restored her dignity, her faith, and her purpose. Time became Humaira's greatest healer. The shadows of her past no longer clung to her every step. Instead, they served as reminders of where she had once stood and how far she had come. Her small store, once a modest attempt to rebuild her life, grew slowly but steadily. She added new shelves, stocked more items, and welcomed a wider range of customers. People trusted her, something she had never truly felt during her years at the clinic. Trust, she realized, was worth more than money. It was the first real wealth she had earned honestly. Her home, too, felt different. It was quieter, but in a comforting way. Syra had regained much of her strength. The shame that once crushed her had transformed into humility, maturity, and a deeper understanding of life. She worked hard, stayed focused, and carried herself with grace. Though the wounds of her past would always shape her, they no longer defined her. She held her head up, not with pride, but with resilience. Humaira watched her sisters grow into grounded, thoughtful young women. They consulted her on decisions, shared their worries with her, and treated her with a respect that came from genuine admiration. They knew the weight she carried, how she had given up her own dreams to hold the family together. They saw her struggle, fall, and rise again with remarkable strength. Their love for her deepened, as did their loyalty. Her mother, too, relied on her more than ever before. She found comfort in Humaira's calm leadership and her unwavering honesty. The pressure to hide secrets or cover mistakes no longer existed within the house. What replaced it was a quiet unity built on truth, a foundation far stronger than the fragile walls they once lived behind. Yet even in peace, Humaira never forgot the lessons she had learned. She often stood outside her closed clinic door, now sealed and untouched, and felt a shiver of gratitude that she had escaped its grip. She knew many people never managed to break free from cycles of guilt and survival, but she had been given a chance to rebuild her life, something she never took for granted. Most evenings after closing the store, Humaira sat outside watching people walk by. She observed the world with a gentleness she didn't possess before. She prayed quietly for those who were lost, confused, or trapped in their own dark decisions. She prayed they would find the courage she once lacked, the courage to walk away. Her journey had taught her a truth she wished she had understood earlier. No amount of desperation justifies destroying your own soul, and no amount of guilt prevents you from rebuilding it. Humaira wasn't perfect, and she didn't pretend to be. She simply chose the harder road, the road of honesty after years of darkness. And in choosing that path, she became a living reminder that mistakes do not define a person. The courage to rise after them does.